I love flipping the switch on other people's embarrassment, and today I'm doing it right in your kitchen. If your stomach turns into a war zone after a glass of milk, you're probably sure you already know why. And if it doesn't, you're probably sure this whole topic has nothing to do with you. Here's the thing though, both of those certainties are probably half wrong. In the next few minutes, you'll know exactly which half of humanity you belong to, why your body is even capable of staging a revolt against plain old milk, and what you can actually do about that revolt. Let's start with the obvious question. What exactly is lactose? Lactose is a sugar found in the milk of every mammal, humans included. It hides in the obvious places: cottage cheese, cream, ice cream, but also in bread, sausage, ready-made sauces, and even some medications. On its own, lactose is too big a molecule to just slip through the intestinal wall, so it needs an escort. That escort's name is lactase, an enzyme that lives on the surface of the small intestine. It slices lactose cleanly into two pieces, glucose and galactose, which the body happily scoops up. Without lactase, all that sugar just keeps riding along a route nobody invited it on. Now here's a weird one for you. Nearly every human on the planet is born with a full tank of lactase. Milk is a baby's only food for the first few months of life, so the body doesn't really have a choice. It has to be able to digest it. But once weaning happens, the lactase-making machinery in most people starts quietly powering down. Why on earth would that happen?
The answer is hiding in one tiny detail right next door to the lactase gene. There's a genetic toggle switch there, and it either keeps telling the body to keep making the enzyme into adulthood, or it goes to sleep. About 10,000 years ago, which in evolutionary terms is basically yesterday, that switch got stuck in the on position, independently in a handful of different spots around the planet. And that just happened to line up with a pretty big deal: the exact moment people in those regions started keeping cows, goats, and sheep for their milk. Whoever got lucky with that mutation landed an extra reliable food source, and in lean years, an extra shot at survival, one they could pass straight down to their kids. That's how, bit by bit, the switch stayed flipped on for part of humanity. Northern Europe, for instance, has the highest numbers of these people, while in parts of East Asia, it's almost the opposite. Nearly everyone loses the enzyme back in childhood. So, bottom line, this isn't a disease and it isn't some genetic lottery ticket. It just comes down to whether your ancestors kept cows or not.
Okay, so what happens when the switch is off and lactose gets in anyway? It rides straight through the small intestine, completely untouched, and lands in the large intestine, home to a whole colony of bacteria that, unlike your own body, are absolutely thrilled to see it. The bacteria start fermenting the lactose, and along the way, they crank out a fair amount of gas, hence the bloating and that awkward elevator moment everyone instantly recognizes and nobody dares mention out loud. At the same time, the undigested lactose pulls water straight out of the intestinal walls, and that water, teaming up with the leftover sugar, is what tips things over into diarrhea. But here's the part nobody usually tells you. Lactose intolerance isn't a light switch with two settings, on or off. It's more like a volume dial. Some people are running a bit low on the enzyme, and they'll happily survive a splash of milk in their coffee, but hand them a full glass on an empty stomach and they'll be howling. Others have next to none of the enzyme left, and even a small piece of soft cheese sets them off. So the sentence, "I'm lactose intolerant," doesn't actually tell you much, not until you specify exactly how much we're talking about. Now here's something I really don't want you mixing up. Lactose intolerance and a dairy allergy are two completely different animals. Intolerance is purely a digestive issue. Worst case, you're looking at an unpleasant half hour in the bathroom. A milk allergy is a whole different story. There, the immune system isn't going after the sugar, it's attacking the milk protein, and the reaction can be far more serious, up to and including swelling and life-threatening situations in severe cases. If your symptoms stick around even after lactose-free milk, lactose clearly isn't the problem, and that's not the moment to keep experimenting on your own. The good news is you don't have to read tea leaves to figure this out. A doctor might have you cut dairy out of your diet for a couple of weeks and see if you feel better. That's called an elimination diet. There's also a breath test, which measures the amount of hydrogen in your breath after you drink some lactose. If you're short on the enzyme, hydrogen levels will spike well above normal because that's exactly what those large intestine bacteria produce. In trickier cases, doctors run blood work or a more thorough workup. But for most people, those first two steps are enough to get a real answer instead of a guess.
If the diagnosis is confirmed, there's no need to panic. You can take lactase pills or drops right before eating dairy, and your body gets that missing Escort delivered artificially. You can switch to lactose-free milk and cottage cheese. They're pretty much everywhere now. Hard-aged cheeses like cheddar and Swiss, along with natural yogurt with live cultures, are usually much easier on the system than regular milk because aging or fermentation has already burned off most of the lactose. And here's the part that surprises a lot of people. Most folks with intolerance can handle a small serving of dairy in one sitting just fine, especially paired with other food instead of on an empty stomach. There's usually no need to cut dairy out of your life entirely just to be safe, unless your doctor tells you otherwise. So let's circle back to where we started. If you were sure you were fine, now you know that being fine is genetic, not some personal willpower flex. If you were sure you had an intolerance, now you know it isn't a life sentence, just a dial you can absolutely learn to work with. Neither one is anything to be embarrassed about, because both were written into your genes long before you ever poured your first glass of milk. My job here is done. Lights on. What you pour into that glass next is entirely up to you.